Hey you. Yes you. If you've ever felt small, invisible, or like the world was conspiring to make you feel less than, then this is your story. This is my story. A story of humiliation, resilience, and how I turned one of the worst days of my life into the moment I finally found myself. So hit that subscribe button, grab a cup of coffee, or wine, no judgment here, and let me take you through the chaos, laughter, and tears of what happened at my sister's wedding. Trust me, you won't want to miss the ending. You know those moments in life when everything just feels off? Like the universe decided to throw all its bad juju at you at once. Well, that's exactly how I felt standing in the middle of a vineyard in Napa Valley, California, on the day of my sister Chloe's wedding. The sun was shining, the flowers were blooming, and everyone was dressed to the nines, except me. Because guess what? My white dress now had a giant red wine stain courtesy of none other than my darling little sister. Oh, and did I mention she laughed about it? Yeah, laughed. I'm Grace Bennett, by the way. Event planner extraordinaire, according to my business card. But to my family, I'm just Grace, the reliable one. You know, the person who gets things done without expecting so much as a thank you. It's not that I mind helping out. It's literally my job, but there's something soul-crushing about being treated like an afterthought by the people who are supposed to love you most. Anyway, back to the dress debacle. There I was, trying to keep it together while Chloe giggled like it was some hilarious sitcom moment. And then came the kicker. Her fiancé, Nathan, chimed in with his 2 cents. Maybe you should have worn something darker, he quipped, smirking like he'd just delivered the punchline of the year. Cue internal eye roll. At that point, I wasn't even mad anymore, I was numb. But little did they know, this was only the beginning of their rude awakening. Stick around, because trust me, karma's a dish best served cold, and I was about to whip up a feast. Let me paint you a picture of my oh-so-perfect family. First, there's my mom, Patricia. She's the kind of woman who thinks hosting Thanksgiving dinner means micromanaging every single detail while simultaneously critiquing everyone else's contributions. Then there's my dad, Robert, who's basically a human statue. He sits quietly in the corner, nodding occasionally like he's afraid speaking up might cause World War III. And finally, there's Chloe, the golden child. Beautiful, talented, effortlessly charming. Basically, everything I'm not. Growing up, I always felt like the backup singer to Chloe's lead vocalist. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. I really do. But loving someone doesn't mean you don't notice when they walk all over you. Take last Christmas, for example. Chloe forgot to buy gifts for anyone except herself. So naturally, Mom made me run out to the mall on Christmas Eve to cover for her. Did Chloe ever apologize? Nope. Instead, she spent the entire holiday bragging about her new designer handbag. Fast forward to the wedding planning process, and nothing had changed. I was the one making spreadsheets, coordinating vendors, and handling last-minute disasters. Meanwhile, Chloe breezed through it all, showing up late to meetings and acting like she was doing everyone a favor by simply existing. And Nathan? Let's just say he wasn't exactly Prince Charming material. Sure, he looked good in a suit, but beneath the surface, he was arrogant, entitled, and completely oblivious to anyone else's feelings. Together, they were a match made in superficial heaven, and I was stuck playing the role of unpaid wedding planner/emotional punching bag. But hey, maybe I should have seen this coming. After all, family dynamics are complicated. Or maybe I was just too busy trying to prove myself to realize I didn't need their approval in the first place. Either way, buckle up, because things were about to get messy, and not in the fun, champagne-popping kind of way. Now, here's where things started to spiral out of control. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a low-key preview of the main event, a chance for everyone to relax, share some laughs, and toast to the happy couple. Spoiler alert, it did not go as planned. Picture this, a room full of people I barely knew, all dressed to impress, sipping expensive wine and pretending to care about each other's lives. Meanwhile, I was standing awkwardly in the corner, clutching a glass of sparkling water like it was my lifeline. That's when the first insult hit. My mom leaned over to one of Chloe's friends and said, loud enough for half the table to hear, "Grace has always been more of a behind-the-scenes type, hasn't she?" "Thanks, Mom." Way to make me feel invisible in a room full of strangers. But wait, it gets better. Later that evening, during the speeches, Nathan decided to share a funny anecdote about how he and Chloe almost canceled the wedding because of all the stress. Stress caused by who exactly? Oh right, me. The person who stayed up until 3 a.m. perfecting seating charts and calming down hysterical florists. But instead of acknowledging any of that, he joked about how lucky they were to have pulled it off despite the chaos. Chaos that, again, I had single-handedly managed. By the end of the night, I was ready to crawl under the table and hide. My best friend, Mia, could see the storm brewing in my eyes. "Grace," she whispered, pulling me aside. "Don't let them win. You're better than this." She was right, of course. But at that moment, I didn't feel better. I felt broken. Little did I know, the real fireworks were yet to come. All right, buckle up, because this is where things go from bad to worse. So, remember that white dress I mentioned earlier? Yeah, the one I spent weeks agonizing over, debating whether it was too plain or just right? Well, apparently, my sister Chloe thought it was just right for a red wine spill. Here's what happened. We were halfway through the rehearsal dinner when Chloe, who had already downed 2 glasses of Pinot Noir, tripped over her own feet. Now, normally, this would have been funny. Like, classic clumsy Chloe moment. But instead of laughing it off, she decided to make it my problem. As the glass tipped over and splashed across my chest, she looked at me with a smug grin and said, "Oh, Grace, only you could turn a simple spill into a disaster. Can you believe that? Not an apology, not even a hint of remorse. Just pure condescension wrapped in a fake smile." And then, as if things couldn't get any better, Nathan chimed in with his charming commentary. "Maybe next time, stick to darker colors, huh?" That's when something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, throw a plate across the room kind of way, though trust me, I considered it. No, it was quieter than that. A slow burn, like the fuse on a stick of dynamite. Because here's the thing. I'd spent months pouring my heart into this wedding, sacrificing weekends, sleep, and sanity to make sure everything was perfect for Chloe. And now, standing there in my ruined dress, I realized none of it mattered. To them, I was still just a background character in their glamorous Hollywood movie. So yeah, I smiled politely, excused myself to the bathroom, and cried in front of the mirror while blotting out the stain with cold water. But let me tell you something. I wasn't crying because of the dress. I was crying because I finally understood. No matter how hard I tried, I'd never be enough for them. And honestly, that realization hurt more than anything else. Okay, so after the whole Weinstein fiasco, I needed some air. Badly. I slipped outside onto the patio, hoping the cool night breeze would calm me down. What I didn't expect, to overhear a conversation that would change everything. I was standing by the fountain, trying to process my feelings, when I heard voices coming from around the corner. It was Chloe and Nathan, talking about, well, me. At first, I thought maybe they were discussing logistics for the wedding or something equally boring. But then I caught snippets of their conversation, and suddenly I wished I hadn't. "Can you believe she actually wore that dress?" Chloe said, her tone dripping with disdain. "It's like she doesn't even care about looking good." Nathan laughed, not a chuckle but a full-on belly laugh, and replied, "Honestly, I don't know why we bother inviting her to these things. She's such a buzzkill." A buzzkill? Seriously? After everything I'd done for them? I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. They weren't just mocking my outfit, they were mocking me. My choices, my personality, my very existence. And the worst part, they didn't even think twice about it. To them, I was invisible unless they needed someone to pick up the slack. Standing there in the shadows, I made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like a doormat, fine. But I wasn't going to let them walk all over me without consequences. Karma might be slow, but honey, it's also delicious. And I was about to serve it piping hot. The next morning, I called Mia. She's always been my rock, the person who knows exactly what to say to pull me out of a funk. When I told her what I'd overheard, she didn't sugarcoat it. "Grace," she said firmly, "you deserve better than this. These people don't appreciate you, and frankly, they don't deserve your effort." But here's the thing. I didn't want to just walk away. No, I wanted them to understand what it feels like to have the rug pulled out from under them. So Mia and I hatched a plan A subtle yet satisfying revenge plot that would expose Chloe and Nathan for who they really were. First step: digging into the guest list. Turns out, a lot of the attendees weren't close friends or family. They were business associates, distant acquaintances, and random influencers Chloe and Nathan invited to boost their social status. Classic move for people who care more about appearances than authenticity. Armed with this knowledge, I started tweaking the seating chart, placing Chloe's most critical relatives far from the head table and swapping generic speeches with heartfelt ones from real friends. Mia loved the idea. "This isn't just revenge," she said. "It's justice. You're giving everyone a chance to see them for who they really are." And honestly, for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wouldn't just be about getting back at Chloe and Nathan, it could be about reclaiming my power too. Now, here's where things got interesting. On the morning of the wedding, chaos erupted before anyone even had breakfast. Chloe woke up in a panic because her favorite pair of diamond earrings, her something borrowed, were missing. Naturally, she immediately accused me of losing them. "Grace, did you take them?" she demanded, storming into my room without knocking. Her hair was a mess, her makeup half done, and her voice shrill enough to wake the dead. "You're the only one who's been in my suite." I stared at her, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? Why would I steal your earrings?" She crossed her arms and gave me that look, the one that says, "Because you're jealous of me." Meanwhile, our mom hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands and muttering about how stressful weddings are. Classic Patricia move. Of course, I hadn't taken the earrings. But instead of defending myself, I played along. Maybe they fell behind the dresser," I suggested innocently. "Or maybe karma decided to teach you a lesson about treating people poorly." Okay, I didn't actually say that last part, but I definitely thought it. By the time the earrings turned up, in Chloe's clutch bag, naturally, tensions were sky high. Everyone was stressed, snappy and ready to snap. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see what happened next. Because deep down, I knew the real drama was just beginning. Alright, so by this point, I was fully committed to my plan. The missing earrings debacle had set the stage perfectly. Chloe was frazzled, Nathan was annoyed, and everyone else was tiptoeing around them like they were walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, I was calm. Too calm, honestly. It was almost scary how much control I felt over the situation. The first thing I did? Tweak the seating chart again. This time, I went full-on mastermind. Chloe's judgmental Aunt Susan, placed at a table with her least favorite cousin. Nathan's uptight boss, seated next to his loudmouth college buddy who'd had way too many glasses of champagne last night. And those random influencers Chloe invited for clout? They got stuck at a table near the kitchen entrance, far from the dance floor and photo ops. Oh, and let's not forget the speeches. Instead of letting Chloe and Nathan handpick their usual crew of sycophants, I arranged for some unexpected guests to take the mic. One of them was Mia, who agreed to give a heartfelt toast about friendship and loyalty, and maybe throw in a few pointed comments about gratitude. Another was Liam Carter, an old flame I hadn't seen in years but secretly hoped might show up. More on him later. Every change I made was subtle enough to seem accidental, but deliberate enough to ruffle feathers. It wasn't about being petty. It was about exposing the cracks in Chloe and Nathan's perfect facade. Because let's face it, no one's life is as flawless as they pretend on Instagram, especially not theirs. As I finalized the details, I couldn't help but smile. For once, I wasn't just a reliable background player. I was the puppeteer, pulling strings and watching the chaos unfold. And honestly, it felt amazing. If you've ever planned a wedding, or even been part of one, you know mornings are always chaotic. People oversleep, dresses don't fit, and someone inevitably forgets to charge their phone. But nothing could have prepared me for the level of dysfunction that unfolded on Chloe's big day. It started with breakfast, or rather, the lack thereof. The catering staff accidentally delivered bagels instead of croissants, which sent Chloe into a tailspin. "How can I possibly get married without croissants?" she wailed, pacing back and forth in her robe. Yes, seriously. Croissants. Meanwhile, Nathan was dealing with his own crisis. His tuxedo jacket had mysteriously shrunk overnight, not my doing, though I wouldn't have minded taking credit. He stormed into the bridal suite demanding answers, only to find Chloe mid-meltdown and our mom frantically trying to mediate. It was like a reality TV show, except way more exhausting. Amidst all the drama, I stayed eerily composed. Part of me wanted to step in and fix everything, the same way I always did, but another part of me thought, why should I? These people hadn't exactly gone out of their way to make my life easier, so why should I bend over backward for them? Instead, I focused on executing my plan. I double-checked the seating chart, confirmed the speeches were locked in, and made sure the DJ knew which songs to play during key moments. Every detail mattered because every detail was a thread waiting to unravel Chloe and Nathan's carefully constructed image. By the time we headed to the ceremony site, I was buzzing with anticipation. The stage was set, the players were in place, and all I had to do was sit back and watch the fireworks. Now, here's where things really started to spiral. The ceremony itself began smoothly enough, beautiful weather, picturesque scenery, and a string quartet playing soft classical music. Everyone looked happy, serene, even hopeful. But trust me, that didn't last long. When it came time for the vows, Nathan stumbled. Like hard. He froze halfway through his speech, staring blankly at the paper in his hands before mumbling something about forever and commitment. It wasn't romantic, it was awkward. Painfully awkward. You could practically hear the collective cringe ripple through the crowd. Later, during the reception, things went from bad to worse. One of the wealthy acquaintances Chloe and Nathan had invited, a guy named Greg, stood up to give an impromptu toast. At first, it seemed harmless enough. He praised the couple for their generosity in hosting such a lavish event. But then he dropped a bombshell. "You know," he said, raising his glass, "I was surprised when Chloe and Nathan invited me. We're not close friends or anything. But hey, who am I to turn down free food and drinks?" Cue nervous laughter from the audience. Honestly, though, I think it says a lot about their priorities. They clearly value appearances over authenticity. You could have heard a pin drop. Chloe turned bright red. Nathan glared daggers at Greg, and the rest of the guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Meanwhile, I sat back and sipped my champagne, pretending to be shocked. Inside, however, I was grinning like the Cheshire Cat. After the disaster that was Greg's speech, tensions reached a boiling point. Chloe cornered me outside the reception hall, her eyes blazing with fury. "What the hell is going on, Grace?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "First the earrings, then the seating chart, now this? Are you trying to ruin my wedding?" I stared at her, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? You think I'm behind all this?" "Yes," she snapped. "Who else would do something like this? Who else hates me enough to sabotage my special day?" That stopped me cold. Hate her? Is that what she really thought? For a moment, I considered telling her the truth, that I didn't hate her. I loved her despite everything. But love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect, and it certainly doesn't mean staying silent when someone treats you like garbage. So instead of defending myself, I leaned in closer and whispered, "Maybe karma's finally catching up to you, Chloe. Ever think of that?" Her jaw dropped, and for once, she was speechless. Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there under the stars. As I rejoined the party, I felt lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure, I'd already won. Let's keep the momentum going. Here's how we can develop episodes 12 to 15, diving deeper into the emotional stakes, escalating tensions, and setting up the climactic showdown. We'll maintain that conversational, solo podcast style while keeping the listener hooked with raw honesty and sharp storytelling. Okay, so after my little confrontation with Chloe under the stars, I figured things couldn't possibly get worse for her, or better for me. But oh, how wrong I was. The reception continued, but the atmosphere felt off. Like a pot simmering on the stove, just waiting to boil over. Guests were whispering behind their hands, speculating about what had gone wrong during the ceremony and why Greg's speech had been such a disaster. Some people seemed genuinely shocked. Others looked amused, like they'd stumbled into the best reality TV episode of their lives. Meanwhile, Chloe and Nathan clung to each other like two drowning sailors on a sinking ship, desperate to keep appearances intact. But here's the thing, appearances only last so long when the foundation beneath them is crumbling. And trust me, the cracks were starting to show. Every forced smile, every overly enthusiastic toast, every awkward attempt at damage control, It all added up to one big neon sign flashing. Fake FOD alert. I watched it all unfold from my seat near the back of the room, sipping champagne and trying not to look too smug. Mia kept shooting me knowing glances, silently cheering me on, while my mom shot me disapproving looks, clearly convinced I was somehow responsible for everything. She wasn't entirely wrong. Still, there was a part of me that hesitated. A tiny voice in the back of my head whispering, "Is this really worth it? Are you sure you're ready for whatever happens next?" Because let's be real, once you set something like this in motion, there's no turning back. And deep down, I knew the real fireworks were yet to come. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any more dramatic, in walks Liam Carter. Tall, dark-haired, and effortlessly charming, he looked exactly like I remembered him from college, but also different. More confident, maybe. Or maybe it was just the way his eyes lit up when he saw me across the room. "Grace Bennett," he said, approaching with that easy grin that used to make my heart skip a beat. "Long time no see." I blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. "Liam, what are you doing here?" He shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Your friend Mia invited me. Said you might need some moral support." His tone softened as he added, "And I have to admit, I was curious to see how much you've changed since we last talked." That comment hit me harder than I expected. Back in college, Liam and I had dated briefly, a whirlwind romance that ended almost as quickly as it began. We parted ways amicably enough, but there was always this lingering question between us, what if? Seeing him now, standing there looking impossibly handsome in his tailored suit, made those old feelings resurface in a way I hadn't anticipated. But before I could process any of that, Liam turned on the charm for the rest of the room. Within minutes, he was chatting up my mom, complimenting Chloe's dress, while subtly hinting at how superficial the whole event felt, and generally winning everyone over. Even Patricia, who rarely gave anyone besides Chloe a second glance, was fawning over him like he was royalty. It was surreal, watching Liam navigate the chaos like he belonged there. And honestly, it made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, fate had brought him here for a reason. Of course, Chloe couldn't resist inserting herself into the situation. Always the center of attention, she sidled up to Liam later that evening, her signature fake smile plastered across her face. "So Liam, right?" she purred, laying on the charm thick enough to choke on. "What brings you to our little celebration?" Liam didn't miss a beat. "Mia invited me," he replied smoothly. "Said Grace could use someone in her corner tonight." Chloe's smile faltered for a split second before snapping back into place. "Oh, how sweet. Though I'm sure Grace doesn't mind sharing the spotlight for once." Ouch. Subtle dig much. But Liam didn't take the bait. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his expression shifting from polite interest to something sharper. "Actually, I think Grace deserves all the credit tonight. Without her, none of this would have happened, at least, not nearly as well. She's got a talent for making magic out of chaos." The room fell silent. You could practically hear the collective gasp ripple through the crowd. Chloe's face turned bright red, and Nathan shifted uncomfortably beside her. Even Patricia looked stunned, though she quickly masked it with a tight-lipped smile. For a moment, it felt like the entire universe had aligned to validate everything I'd been feeling for years. All the times I'd been overlooked, dismissed, or treated like an afterthought, they didn't matter anymore. Because in that moment, Liam had seen me. Really seen me. And for the first time in forever, I felt like I mattered. If Chloe's meltdown earlier was bad, Nathan's unraveling was downright catastrophic. After Liam's comments, the tension in the room reached DEFCON levels. People were either avoiding eye contact or openly staring, waiting to see what would happen next. And then, like clockwork, Nathan cracked. It started during another round of speeches. One of Chloe's actual friends stood up to give a heartfelt toast about love and commitment, which somehow managed to highlight everything wrong with Chloe and Nathan's relationship. By the end of it, Nathan looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. But instead of retreating, he decided to double down. Grabbing the microphone, he launched into an impromptu speech that spiraled rapidly downhill. "You know," he began, his voice slurring slightly from too many glasses of scotch, "this wedding wasn't even my idea. My parents pressured me into proposing because they thought it'd look good. And honestly, I should have listened to my gut. The room froze. Everyone stared at him, mouths agape, as he continued rambling about how he wasn't ready for marriage and how Chloe was obsessed with perfection. By the time he finished, Chloe was sobbing uncontrollably, her carefully curated image shattered beyond repair. As the guests whispered among themselves, I sat quietly absorbing the scene. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about exposing the truth. About showing everyone, including myself, that sometimes the people who seem to have it all together are actually falling apart inside. By this point, the reception was teetering on the edge of chaos. Chloe was sobbing in the corner, Nathan was pacing like a caged animal, and the guests were buzzing with barely concealed gossip. It felt like the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for the next shoe to drop. And then it was my turn to step up. When the MC announced that I'd be giving a speech, I swear I heard a collective groan from certain corners of the room. Probably Chloe and Nathan, assuming I'd use the opportunity to twist the knife further. But honestly, that wasn't what this was about anymore. This was bigger than revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice. I stood at the mic, looking out at the sea of faces staring back at me. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, and a few downright hostile. But none of that mattered, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't speaking to please anyone else. I was speaking for me. Hi, I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. First off, let me say thank you to everyone who showed up tonight, whether out of love, obligation, or just free food. A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the crowd. But mostly, I want to thank the people who've truly supported me through thick and thin. People like Mia. I nodded toward her, and she gave me an encouraging thumbs up, and even Liam, who reminded me tonight that being seen is sometimes all we need. Then I turned my gaze toward Chloe and Nathan. They were sitting stiffly at the head table, their expressions unreadable, but their body language screaming discomfort. Planning this wedding has been, well, let's just call it educational. I learned a lot about sacrifice, patience, and the lengths people will go to protect their image. But most importantly, I learned something about myself. That I don't have to shrink to make others feel big. That I deserve to take up space, too. The room was silent now, every eye fixed on me. Even Chloe had stopped crying long enough to listen. So here's my toast, I concluded, raising my glass. To real connections, honest moments, and finding your worth. Not because someone else tells you to, but because you already know it. The applause that followed was thunderous. People stood, cheering as if they'd been waiting years to hear those words. And maybe they had, because deep down, we all know what it feels like to be overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed. And tonight, I wasn't just speaking for myself, I was speaking for everyone who's ever felt invisible. After my speech, the energy in the room shifted completely. Guests were mingling more freely, laughing louder, and generally acting like they just witnessed the best plot twist in a rom-com. Meanwhile, Chloe sat frozen at the head table, her mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She stormed over to me, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice low but trembling with rage. "This is my day, Grace. Mine. You had no right to do any of this." I stared at her, feeling a strange mix of pity and resolve. "You're right," I said softly. "This is your day, but it's also mine, and Mom's, and Dad's, and everyone else's who got dragged into your little fantasy world. The difference is, I'm done pretending everything's okay when it's not." Her lip quivered, and for a split second, I thought she might actually cry again. Instead, she spat one last venomous remark. "You'll regret this, Grace. Mark my words." And with that, she spun around and marched out of the tent, leaving behind stunned silence. Nathan followed shortly after, muttering something about needing fresh air. Honestly, I didn't care where they went. Their exit only confirmed what I already knew. The cracks in their perfect facade weren't just surface level, they ran deep. Once the dust settled, I slipped outside to clear my head. The cool night air hit me like a balm, soothing the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I wandered toward the vineyard rows, the soft glow of string lights illuminating the path ahead. That's where Liam found me. He approached quietly, his hands tucked into his pockets, and his expression thoughtful. "Hey," he said simply, falling into step beside me. "You okay?" I shrugged, unsure how to answer. Physically, I was fine. Emotionally, that was another story. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me feels guilty for causing so much drama. But another part, I trailed off, searching for the right words. But another part feels free. Liam finished for me. When I nodded, he smiled knowingly. Grace, you didn't cause the drama. You just exposed what was already there. Sometimes, the truth hurts, but it's still the truth. His words resonated deeply, like he'd reached into my soul and pulled out exactly what I needed to hear. For a moment, we walked in companionable silence, the weight of the evening slowly lifting. You know, Liam said eventually, his tone lighter now, you're pretty incredible when you stand up for yourself. I always knew you had it in you, you just needed the right push. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was the fact that Liam Carter was standing here, complimenting me under the stars. Either way, I decided to savor the moment, because after everything that had happened tonight, I deserved it. Back inside, Mia cornered me near the dessert table, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Oh my God, Grace, that speech was everything, she gushed, pulling me into a tight hug. Seriously, I think you just single-handedly redefined the term, mic drop. I chuckled, though part of me still felt raw from the emotional roller coaster of the past few hours. Thanks, Mia. I hope I didn't ruin things between me and Chloe permanently. Mia waved a hand dismissively. Please. If anything, you did her a favor. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize how toxic their behavior is. And hey, if she can't handle the truth, that's her problem, not yours. Her words struck a chord. Over the years, I'd spent so much energy trying to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to be the good sister. But tonight, I'd finally chosen myself, and it felt liberating. You know what? I said, grabbing a mini chocolate cupcake from the table. You're right. Screw guilt. I'm done apologizing for existing. Mia grinned, raising her glass of champagne in a mock toast. Now that's the Grace Bennett I know and love. Here's to new beginnings, and to kicking ass unapologetically. We clinked glasses, laughing as the music swelled in the background. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Let's wrap this up with the final stretch of episodes 20 to 25, that deliver emotional closure, reconciliation, where appropriate, and a satisfying conclusion to Grace's journey. We'll maintain the conversational tone while tying up loose ends and leaving listeners with a sense of hope and empowerment. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. Like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. The sun streamed through the windows of my hotel room, and for once, I didn't feel the urge to immediately jump into problem-solving mode or check my phone for messages from Chloe, or anyone else, for that matter. But then there was a knock at the door. Standing in the hallway was Chloe, looking like she'd barely slept. Her eyes were puffy, her hair messy, and her designer dress wrinkled. A far cry from the polished version of herself I was used to seeing. "Can we talk?" she asked hesitantly, her voice small and uncharacteristically vulnerable. I stepped aside, letting her in. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve, while I leaned against the dresser, waiting for her to speak. Finally, she broke the silence. "Grace, I'm sorry," she blurted out, tears welling up in her eyes. "For everything. For treating you like crap, for laughing at your expense, for acting like you're invisible when all you've ever done is try to help me." Her words caught me off guard, not because they were unexpected, but because they came from such an honest place. This wasn't the Chloe I knew, confident, self-assured, untouchable. This was someone raw and real, stripped of all pretenses. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she continued, her voice trembling. "But I need you to know that I see you now. I see how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, and how little I've appreciated any of it. And I hate myself for that." I sighed, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, all swirling together. "Chloe," I said gently, "I love you. You're my sister, and nothing will ever change that. But loving someone doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. If we're going to move forward, things have to be different between us." She nodded furiously, wiping away tears. "They will be. I promise." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But promises are easy, actions are what count. Still, I gave her a small smile, letting her know I was willing to try. After all, family is complicated. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it does open the door to healing. Later that afternoon, as I packed my bags to leave Napa Valley early, there was another knock at my door. This time it was Mom. Patricia Bennett, queen of passive-aggressive comments and micromanagement, stood awkwardly in the doorway, clutching her purse like it might protect her from whatever storm awaited inside. "Grace, can I come in?" she asked tentatively. I hesitated before nodding, curious about what she could possibly want after the chaos of the past 2 days. She sat down on the edge of the bed, smoothing her skirt nervously. It was strange seeing her so unsure. It was like watching a character from a movie suddenly step out of their usual role. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice soft and hesitant. "I've spent years comparing you to Chloe, expecting you to live up to some impossible standard, and completely ignoring how amazing you are in your own right. And I'm so sorry for that." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Growing up, I'd always craved her approval, longing for her to see me as more than just the reliable one. Hearing her acknowledge her mistakes felt surreal and incredibly validating. "I never meant to hurt you," she continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought I was helping by pushing you to be better, but now I realize I was just making things worse. Can you ever forgive me?" Part of me wanted to say no, to hold on to the pain and resentment I'd carried for years. But forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to let go of the anger so you can move forward. So instead, I reached out and took her hand. "We'll figure it out," I said simply. "Together." She squeezed my hand tightly, her shoulders sagging with relief. In that moment, I realized something important. Families aren't perfect. They make mistakes, they hurt each other, and sometimes they fall apart. But they also have the potential to heal, if everyone's willing to put in the effort. As I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my rental car later that day, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in years. The wedding disaster turn catharsis had taught me so much, not just about my family, but about myself. I'd spent so long trying to prove my worth to others that I'd forgotten how to value myself. Before I pulled away from the hotel, my phone buzzed with a text notification. It was from Liam. "Hey, stranger. Just wanted to say I had a great time reconnecting with you. How about dinner sometime? Let's catch up properly." I smiled, reading the message over again. There was something comforting about knowing he was out there, rooting for me, even when I struggled to root for myself. Maybe fate had brought him back into my life for a reason. With a renewed sense of purpose, I hit reply. "Dinner sounds perfect. Let's do it." And just like that, I drove away from Napa Valley, leaving behind the chaos, the drama, and the old version of myself. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. For the first time in forever, I was excited to find out what came next. Returning to Chicago felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. Work became my anchor, grounding me as I processed everything that had happened over the weekend. My clients noticed a difference too. They said I seemed more confident, more present, like I'd finally embraced my full potential. Mia, of course, wasted no time teasing me about Liam. "So, spill the tea," she demanded during our weekly coffee date. "When's the big date? What are you wearing? Do I need to start planning your wedding?" I laughed, swatting her arm playfully. "Slow down, matchmaker. We're just having dinner, not eloping." But deep down, I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement whenever I thought about seeing him again. Dinner turned into drinks, which turned into late-night conversations that left me smiling long after we parted ways. With Liam, I didn't feel the need to shrink myself or dim my light. He saw me for who I truly was and liked what he saw. Meanwhile, my relationship with Chloe began to shift. She called regularly, checking in and apologizing repeatedly for her past behavior. At first, I was skeptical, but over time, I saw genuine effort on her part to change. She started asking for my opinion instead of dismissing it, thanking me for my help instead of taking it for granted. Our bond wasn't perfect, but it was growing stronger, and that was enough for now. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known was possible. My career flourished, my friendships deepened, and my connection with Liam blossomed into something real and meaningful. We weren't rushing into anything, we were taking our time, getting to know each other as adults rather than the college kids we once were. One evening, as we strolled along Lake Michigan, Liam stopped abruptly and turned to face me. "Grace," he said, his expression serious yet tender, "I know we've both been through a lot, but being with you feels right. Like coming home." My heart skipped a beat. "Liam," I started, unsure how to respond. He chuckled, cutting me off. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just know that wherever this goes, I'm here for you. Fully and completely." In that moment, standing beneath the stars with the city skyline glowing in the distance, I realized something profound. I didn't need validation from anyone else anymore. Not Chloe, not Mom, not even Liam. Because I already had everything I needed within myself. And so, here we are, the end of my story. Or maybe just the beginning of a new one. Either way, I can't help but laugh when I think about how far I've come since that disastrous wedding weekend. What started as a nightmare ended up being the catalyst for transformation, for me, for my family, and for my future. Looking back, I realized that revenge wasn't the point. Karma wasn't the goal. The real victory was finding my voice, reclaiming my power, and learning to stand tall, even when the world tried to push me down. Sure, there were moments of doubt, anger, and heartache along the way. But those moments shaped me into the person I am today, strong, resilient, and unapologetically me. So if you're listening to this podcast and thinking, wow, Grace has it all figured out, let me stop you right there. I don't. None of us do. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair. But that's okay, because every challenge we face gives us the chance to grow, to evolve, and to become the best versions of ourselves. To anyone out there who's ever felt invisible, undervalued, or overlooked, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by how much space you take up in someone else's world. It's defined by the light you shine in your own. And trust me, you are glowing brighter than you know. Thanks for sticking with me until the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Until next time, keep chasing your dreams, and don't forget to laugh at the absurdity of it all. After all, life's greatest victories often come wrapped in its messiest moments.